Alright, hello guys. So we've got what year is this? 2020 Kia Telluride. We're doing the rear pads and rotors. Has an electronic parking brake. He's grinding in here, so we're going to do pads and rotors on this one. First things first, if you have a scanner that can put this electronic parking brake in maintenance mode, you do that inside the vehicle. For some reason my scanner is wanting an internet connection right now and it's not responding to my mobile hotspot, so I'm going to do this the manual way. I'll explain it better later, but you just got to take this motor off the back and there's something in there you can wind in to reset that. But first things first, we take this connector off right here. You can just use a pick and pull back on that little tab in there, and then you can just lift that right off. You can also push that, but sometimes they're really hard to push. So we're going to get that out of the way. Then we've got hard to see, we got 14 millimeter down here. I'll take that 14 out. I think I can. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll just take the other one out too. Maybe not. There we go. Just slide that out. So you can actually just rotate that up and slide that right off with the pin. Alright, I'm going to set that over here for now. And then you've got these springs, so we're going to pop these springs off. Sorry about the lighting, the sun's right behind me. Pop both these pads out. You can see that one's grinding. Pop that off. Then you've got a couple 17 millimeter bolts back here. I use a wrench like this and hit it with a hammer, crack those loose, and then I'll use my impact to zip them out. Once we do that, take this bracket off. There's a couple screws here. You're not going to get those with a screwdriver. You need something like this, a little impact screwdriver. You hit it on the end down there while you're kind of giving it a slight twist, and it'll knock those out. And then you can unscrew them with a little screwdriver. If you're having a hard time with those, get a big socket on that screw and just tap it with a hammer a few times. Or you can get another big socket around the screw on the rotor and hit that a few times to help break them loose, and then use your impact driver. Get those screws out, and then we'll be able to tap that rotor right off. Just tap it off from the backside. We'll clean that surface up. We'll clean this bracket up with a wire brush here and here. I'm going to pop these pins out. You want to lubricate those every time. The other one's on the other caliper there. Make sure always lubricate those. And then I'm going to put the new rotor on and reattach this bracket. Tighten those 17 millimeters back up. And then I will get back with you in a second and show you how to reset that caliper. Okay, we've got the old rotor off. Used a wire brush, just cleaned up around this hub and around all this. Cleaned up the bracket with a wire brush. Now the rotor's off, we're going to get this motor off of here. It's not always going to be the same size, but it's usually a 5 millimeter Allen. Sometimes these are a Torx bit. So this is how to reset the electric parking brake. You can see that piston's hanging out without a scanner. It's not hard. It seems complicated, but it's not. You're going to take this screw out and that screw out, and then we're just going to twist this motor off of there. When you get that socket in there, tap it with a hammer, make sure it's seated really good so you don't strip out that screw, because then you're in trouble. Alrighty, there's one. I'm going to set this down here. See what I'm doing. Taparoo. Get that out of there. Can y'all see? I think you can see. So now I'm going to just twist that, lift that right off. You can see that motor. Don't mess with the motor there and damage that. So you can see inside there, we're going to clean that dirt out of there when we're done. Looks like some dirt was getting past that O-ring there. So I'm going to clean that out before I put this back together. Here's that O-ring. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. Little wire brush action. Get a rag, clean that. Okay. Alright, sorry about that. Got that cleaned up, got that O-ring back in there. So you can see that star shape in there. So what you're going to need is a Torx bit. Sorry. Okay, what size is this? That's a 45. Is that the right size? Nope, it's going to be smaller than 45. Usually it's a 47. This one's small. So this 40 almost fits. It's a little loose, but if you crank it, pull on it sideways, you can get it to hook. And then you're just going to twist this by hand, twist it clockwise. You will keep twisting until it stops. Some of them are really easy to twist, some of them are tough. This one's tough. Just keep twisting until it stops. Okay. There it goes. It stopped right there. When it does that, then you can take your tool or C-clamp, but you really wouldn't want to use a C-clamp on this one, just because you don't want to press on the back side of this one. So then you will push this piston in. Keep in mind when you push this piston in, it's going to raise the level of the fluid in the reservoir. So always check your reservoir and make sure it's not over full, so it doesn't overflow as you're doing that. Alright, so that piston's pushed in. Now it's pretty simple. You're just gonna put that motor back on. Now that that's screwed in the way it is, put that motor back on and put those two screws back in. Be careful not to over tighten them. This housing's just plastic, this is aluminum, you don't want to over tighten those. So put that motor back on, tighten those two screws down, and then the caliper is reset. Okay, we're back. So we got that motor back on the back. Like I said, be careful with these bolts, don't over tighten them. We've greased that pin. We've greased the other pin. We've got the rotor on. This pin goes in there, got a little spin. The rotor's on. We got these set screws tightened back up. Make sure when you slide that rotor on that you're lining it up so the screws line up. Got those 17mm bolts back in, got those snugged up tight. You can use a long breaker bar or torque wrench, or use the wrench and the hammer and tighten them back up that way. We've slid this inner pad in there already. Here's the outer pad, just pops in like that. What I like to do next is go ahead and slide the caliper back on. That's gonna just rotate down. But while it's on there like that, in there but up, I like to go ahead and put these springs in, and then I can hold the pad still while I rotate that caliper down. Put these little springs. Sometimes springs like to make the pads pop out of their brackets, so if you put them in like that, hold it, then you can swing this caliper down over there like that. Okay, put that other 14 back in there. We're going to cinch that one down. Don't forget to plug your electric parking brake harness back in. So now all I've got to do is tighten that 14mm bolt and we're good. When you're putting the new hardware on in here where the pads slide, that hardware just clips onto the bracket. Make sure it's not going to rub anywhere on the rotor when the rotor spins. Right inside there's a couple there's like a little tab that hooks inside there. Make sure you press that in with a screwdriver once it's on the bracket so you're sure it's not going to rub on the rotor. It'll rub on this outer edge of the rotor if you're not careful. Alright, give that a little spin. What you're hearing is just the pads rubbing. Check these shields, make sure the shield isn't rubbing on the rotor. So I'm going to tighten that bolt up and we will be done on this side. And then I'm going to pump the brake pedal, make sure the brakes go back to firm. It's going to push those pistons out when I do that. And then check your fluid level when you're done. Make sure the fluid level is where it should be in the reservoir. Make sure your cap's tight. And one last point, before you reset that caliper manually, make sure you've got the right pads. Because if you reset that caliper and then realize you've got the wrong pads and you got to put it all back together and try to drive the car, because one parking brake is going to run a lot longer than the other, it's going to throw some codes, and then you're going to have to get it fixed and have some codes to clear. So just a little tip there. I'm going to tighten that bolt, throw this wheel back on, then go do the other side. So that is it on this Telluride. Hope this helped. All right, see you next time.